Hi, everybody. My name is George Appling. I'm the general manager of Sherwood Forest Fair and also broadly a passionpreneur. I have 8 companies that I genuinely love. I'm super excited to be on the Online Prosperity Show, where we're going to talk about a lot of things, but most importantly, how to choose the relationship between your passion and your work. That's what we're going to do today.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we dive deep into the stories behind the most innovative business leaders. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today I'm thrilled to introduce to you a guest who's not just an entrepreneur, but an actual passionpreneur. Now, George, how are you doing today?
Great, Prosper. How are you?
Fantastic. You see, when I heard you were coming on the show, I was really intrigued, because looking at your website and everything else that you do, you wouldn't even think you run a business. You would think you are some royal prince or king that is, just looking after his own territory. So thank you so much, Your Highness, for gracing us with your presence on the Online Prosperity Show today.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Now, for those that are just thinking, Prosper, stop being the court jester. Introduce us to George already. So George is somebody who builds businesses that they truly love. And he's a man of many hats, or dare I say, many crowns. And he runs everything from a mead-making company to actually a medieval festival, a summer camp, and even a non-profit equine program that actually supports veterans and first responders. As you can see, most of his work is passion based. We're going to be talking about exactly how it all came to be and who George Appling actually is. He also not only stops there, but George is also a Visage chair who actually helps CEOs and business owners to live out their dream careers while making a significant impact. And yeah, I did mention that he wears a lot of hats. He's also got 2 master's degrees from Harvard, a career as a CEO of a billion-dollar company, and he's also adding author to his title from his upcoming book. But this is there already, right? Don't Settle. I think you've got that already now.
Yeah, you can pre-order Don't Settle on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Target.com. It's formally released on October 1st.
Absolutely. So yes, Don't Settle is a pick your own path guide to intentional work. But you might be asking or wondering, what really sets George apart? I mean, the fact that he actually turns his passions into successful ventures, as we're going to be hearing, all while swinging swords. He actually threatened me earlier on that he was going to bring one of his swords, and I was like, oh, we don't condone violence on the Online Prosperity Show, but that's only for his medieval village. All right, so buckle up for an episode that I think is going to be packed with inspiration and actionable insights as we dive into George's world of business, creativity, and intentional living. Now, George, I think I could go on, but this literally, takes away the joy of having such an accomplished person on our show. Now, first of all, tell us a little bit about your journey and how you actually balance all these things, from the festival, summer camp, running a meat company, the non-profit equine program, and also coaching other people to be, do, and have a business that they absolutely love.
Well, I'll answer the second question first. How do I balance all these things? You're right. I have 8 companies, and I dearly love each of them. They were all built because I love them, and no other reason. How do I balance that? I'm kind of looking up right now because I've got a giant whiteboard in my office, and the whiteboard says the same thing it said for 10 years. It says, do what you're doing. And what that means to me is, on any given 30 minutes or any given hour, I am only doing one thing, which means, well, in this hour, Prosper, I am talking to you. My phone is off, my screens are off, my ringers are off. I've got do not disturb in my office. My children know not to come in. I'm doing only this one thing. And so that's two sides of that coin are: one, I only do what I'm doing at that moment, and two, I'm a very scheduled person. So it's not unusual for me to have an appointment, 8 1-hour appointments in a day. And in my calendar, each of my businesses has a different color in the calendar. Like, brown is the Visage work, and orange is the Knights of the Grow work, and turquoise is the Sherwood Forest Fair work, etc. So I'm very, very scheduled in my day, and I'm very disciplined to only do one thing at a time. There's a lot of, I don't want to get too much on a tangent, but quickly, there's a lot of psychological evidence that people who think they can multitask are kidding themselves. And so psychologists will set up these tests, and you'll do one thing and score it, and they'll do another thing and score it. Then they will have you do both to people who think they're great at multitasking. And of course, they perform both of them significantly less well when trying to do them at the same time. So I'm all about doing one thing at a time.
Absolutely. And George, thank you so much for taking us through, and should I say, giving us permission to actually go on and do things that we absolutely love, because so many people are just pigeonholed into that one thing that maybe they studied, or something that they think makes them money and things of that nature. Now, before we jump into your schedule and things of that nature, I mean, all the businesses that you're doing, they all seem to have been pulled from like a Renaissance fair. You know what I mean? You go to a fair and you find somebody doing X, Y, and Z there, and dress up and things of that nature. How did you maybe know that these ventures would actually be profitable? Because this is something that not a lot of people would look at twice and say, I'm gonna actually schedule myself and make sure I'm doing what I'm doing when I'm doing it.
That's a great question. There's a very specific story about how now I'm going to sound like a dumb American because we say Renaissance, and I know you guys say Renaissance, so forgive me for saying it the wrong way. We'll call it medieval. It's really a medieval fair. So I had this sort of standard business career. I studied business in college. I went to work for McKinsey and Company, which is a big, global strategy consulting firm, helping big companies solve problems. I had a big phase in cell phone distribution, right? I was the chief operating officer of the largest cell phone distribution company in the world. It's called Brightstar. And then I was a chairman and CEO of another cell phone distribution company. But what I did was, when I was 36 years old, and I'm now 55, I put a note in my calendar on my 40th birthday. And when I say my calendar, I don't know if you remember these, but we used to have BlackBerries in our belts. And they were like in holsters, and you thought you were cool because you could pull your BlackBerry out of your holster. At least I did. And so the note on my 40th birthday said "stop" in all capital letters, just STOP. And what that meant to me was, I want to stop doing what the economy expects me to do, and I want to do what I want to do. I want to marry my skills and my passions. So that was a generic idea. And I didn't know specifically what that meant. I gave myself 4 years of runway to figure that out. And so it didn't take long. I think I was 37 when I had the lightning strike moment where a friend of mine told me that the Texas Renaissance Festival was for sale. And the Texas Renaissance Festival is it's an event similar to mine, but it's more for Houston, Texas, and mine is more for Austin. But I had been to this show every year since I was like 14 years old. It's like the only thing I loved my whole life, other than my mother, was going to that festival. And I had gone back every year without fail, having lived in Boston, Massachusetts for 3 years, Germany 3 years, England a year, Russia a year, Melbourne, Australia, where I think you might be, for
Absolutely.
a year. And I flew back from Melbourne to Texas to not miss the Renaissance Festival.
Wow.
So when my friend said it was for sale, it was that big moment of, wait a minute, this is a business. And I started thinking, someone's making a lot of money doing this. And for me, it was just what I love to do in October, November, because that's when that show near Houston runs. And once I started thinking about it that way, I knew that's what I wanted to do. That was the answer to my question of, how am I going to align my skills and my passions by the time I'm 40? So I tried to buy the Texas Renaissance Festival for Houston, and that didn't work. Then I tried to buy the one for Dallas, and that didn't work. And so I co-founded the one for Austin, which is called Sherwood Forest Fair. And we just finished our 15th season, and we entertained 167,000 patrons in 17 operating days. So we're now a big show.
Fantastic, and
And then,
congrats.
you kind of clued in on this, like there's a lot of these things, a lot of the business connect to each other. And so in the first year of the business, my cousin comes up to me and says, I'm the best mead maker in the state, right? And I said, no, I don't know that. And I think I'm just humoring him because, that sounds like something he would say. And he says, well, I brought some mead, which is, if your listeners, some of them don't know, is fermented honey. It's the oldest alcoholic beverage in the historical record. So my cousin says, well, come try my mead. I'm like, okay. And I just think, I'm being nice to my cousin. And I try the mead and I say, wow, that really is the best mead I've ever had. And I've had a lot of mead because I'm a Renaissance Festival guy. And so then by year 2 of Sherwood Forest Fair, I was in the mead business. And now we're quite confident that's the number one selling mead in the state of Texas. And then it kind of going through there. It's like, well, I own this land, and the Renaissance Fair is only, or the medieval fair is only, weekends in the spring. What else can I do? And so then I launched my kind of Robin Hood summer camp, we just finished our 13th year of that, and we had 542 kids over the course of 4 weeks in late June and July. And then we did a Celtic music festival, which we've done for 14 years. And so we just kind of, it all sort of builds out on itself. And then that's kind of my, play dress up and swing swords at my friends for a living world. And then I keep some, irons in the fire in the real world. So I've got my coaching business, and I sometimes only half jokingly say my coaching business keeps me sober. And then I've got an audio software company that I'm really excited about. We have 153 patents on audio algorithms that I think are going to end up being quite valuable.
Fantastic. I mean, seriously, just listening to that is all the sounds and trumpets and everything else that are happening at a Renaissance fair, but it's all happening from that office of yours. So congratulations, my man. That just does sound like you've really landed on your feet. And the fact that this is something that you've been doing ever since you're a kid, so you would know the ins and outs of what actually makes all ages, from kids to adults, very excited. And having left Melbourne, maybe I'm not sure if it was because of the weather, but having left Melbourne just to go to the Renaissance Fair in your city, that also says a lot about the passion that you have for that. And so it was just the next logical option for you to literally just go in and get started in working on that. But what I really gathered from all that you told us here is have a goal, have a time, have a passion, and take action. Because this is exactly what you did at 36 in your BlackBerry. You know what I mean? I remember, like you said, I had one, and you pull it out of the hoister and then it lights up. I don't know, it had a magnetic strip or something like that. And it had a unique number. What was the BlackBerry number called? It was called the PIN number or something, where only people with that unique 7-digit number or so can only message each other, and it was for free. And that, I used to now connect with people that had BlackBerries. Give me your number, you know what I mean? So things of that nature. Right. Now, all of this is quite interesting, but I wanted us to really hone in on the lesson in all of this about, setting a goal with a timeline. From 36, you put a hard stop at 40, and you then went on and did it. How important is it to actually structure one's life or business in such a way that your goals have a timeline and you actually act on them? And also, it has to be something that you're passionate about.
So I think having goals, especially like short term, medium term, and long term, and clearly achievable goals, are a key component of just staying motivated as a human. And there's a mountain of evidence behind that. I think that's more than just an opinion. So I think no matter what path you're on, having explicit, written down goals. I could open my desk drawer and I've got a piece of paper that it has like, here are my 10 goals for the year, which I do every year. So I think having goals is really important no matter what the path you're on. But your question does lead me to this notion of paths. So in my book, I've got this framework, and the framework leads the reader to choose one of 5 paths. And the one that I was on was the balanced path. And a path is how your passion and your work relate to each other. On the balanced path, I had a 20-year career, and before I hopped over to follow my passion. And the reason I did that is that I wanted the financial security that comes with that 20-year career before moving into the passion world. That's why I did the balanced path. But there are other paths. For example, you could follow your passion now at 20 years old, but you should probably only do that if you do not expect financial success and you're completely okay with that, right? If you know you can make a living following your heart now when you're 20 and you're okay with not, having financial means, then that can be a reasonable path. There are other people who they're just not going to follow a passion because they're so obsessed with money. And so there's the money path. So I got the balance path, the money path, the passion now path. The experiment path is for people who don't know what their passion is. And so experiment means hop around a little bit and try to figure out what your passion is. And then there's the independent path, which is your work and your passion don't have anything to do with each other, right? Your work is a means to an end, and you're following your passions maybe on the weekends. And it could be, for those people, it's often the case that their passion isn't monetizable. And so you work and you just do your passions more as pleasure or hobby things on the side. And so my framework leads you to which of those 5 paths is right for you. The cool thing, and to get back to your question, is the balanced path and the passion now path and the experiment path can all end up on the passion path, right? So the balanced path you hop over, and the experiment path you might figure out what your passion is and hop over. The passion now path you do it right away, and in the other two, you may not end up aligning your skills and your passions at all. But then my belief is, if that's your intentional choice, you're going to be much more at peace with it than if you're just doing what the economy wants you to do, or what you fell into, or what your parents wanted you to do. If you decide this is my path, you're going to be more content and joyful in that decision.
Quite like that, because that sort of clarity makes it easy for somebody to actually know what to focus on, because so many of us are just plunged into this world and we don't necessarily know what we need to work on: our health, our wealth, our relationships, or our passions, or whatever it is. We just now need to just survive. And up until you sort of, take a step back, that's when you start looking at maybe like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, have I got a place to live? Have I got the relationships? Have I got a job? And then you then get to the ascension beat, which sometimes for a lot of people, it'll be too late. So you are bringing in something that's very tangible. As you say, there's 5 pathways, which is like a hand that holds on to whatever it is that somebody is going to be, becoming. So you being described as a passionpreneur, George. All right. For our viewers who might be experimenting or not quite sure if what they're doing is of note, and those people that may have heard of the word, oh yeah, follow your passions and the money will follow. Right. For our viewers who want to maybe turn their passion into a business, what would you suggest will be the, first step, or what piece of advice would you give people like that?
If you're thinking about turning a passion into a business, let me see if I can come up with 3 things. One is pressure test your readiness, and by that, do you have the capital, the capabilities, the network, the reputation to have to succeed? So pressure test your readiness, and here's the really important part: humans are terrible at assessing their own readiness. So this is not a self-assessment. You have to get other people to assess your readiness. You need like trusted advisors and people who are going to tell you the hard truth. You need to go find the people who know you and understand business to ask them if you're ready, and have them kind of pick apart, what gaps you might have in terms of capabilities, network capacity, financial capacity, reputation, whatever. So test your readiness, but not on your own. Test it through other people. That's one thing I would do. The second thing I would do is I would go talk to people who are doing something similar to what you want to do. Because there are really interesting spaces where turning a passion into a business often fails. For example, painting. There's just this crazy rate of people who have a deep, deep love for painting. But when they make it a business, the love goes away, right? When you have to paint, it's just a fundamentally different thing than you want to paint. So that's my second piece of advice: is go talk to people who are doing something similar and ask them, do you still love it? And, what did you do wrong that you would have done differently? And just kind of try to dig into the key success factors and the pitfalls that they've taken on their journey. The third thing I would say is if you want to build a business, I'm a huge fan of a formal written business plan. And you can Google free business plan template and you'll get plenty of them. But I'm a big fan of a formal written business plan because it forces you to think holistically. It forces you to think about competition, think about your team, think about the technology you're going to deploy, think about the profit and loss forecast over 5 years, think about your funding sources, all these things. It forces you to be holistic. So those are the top three things I'd say if you're thinking about turning a passion into a business: pressure test your readiness, talk to people who've done something similar, write a formal business plan.
Fantastic. I quite like how most of these things that you're talking about, the theme is basically other people. What do other people think? The people that have been, invested in this journey, where they're at, and things of that nature. Now, if people would listen to this, guess what? We wouldn't have that awful statistic that says not a lot of businesses go past the 3-year mark. Because, people get really excited. Yay, I'm going to be the king in this Renaissance fair. And then they realize that you actually need to get people to the gates. You actually need to feed the people, and you actually need to entertain the people when they show up. It's not just you running with a horse and wielding swords in order for you to do what it is that you absolutely love. So now you've gone on, and I like how you mentioned that, coaching is the only thing that keeps you sober. Maybe you're taking yourself out of your mead business. Don't drink your profits, my man. How does your passion-driven philosophy influence the way you now coach other CEOs and business owners? Because some people, fish don't see the water that they swim in, and other people might not quite see like how you are eloquently putting it across, that they too can be doing and have a business that's profitable and enjoyable.
Yeah, I think the two things that really set me apart as a coach are, one, I'm always leaning into what's your end game for this business and what does your ideal life look like? I really lean hard into what does your ideal life look like, and let's lay out the next 3 steps to get there. Because it may be that, running your business is a part of your ideal life. It may be that selling your business is what enables your ideal life. So I lean really hard into let's draw the picture of your ideal life and the plan to get there. The second thing that I think differentiates me as a coach is that I don't need to do it. The compensation from coaching is a tiny, tiny little rounding error from my other stuff. I do it because I think it's good for the world and I'm being helpful. And what that leads to is I will ask very hard questions. I mean, like if I've got a member who says, his wife isn't on board with something, I'll dig into that. I'm like, well, tell me what that means about your relationship with your wife. And if they say something superficial, I'm like, not good enough, go deeper. So I'll really ask these people questions that no one else will answer. Well, no one else will ask them. And I think that's really powerful. As it turns out, what I found in coaching is people will open their soul to you. You just have to ask them to. And so like, I find it's a really powerful process.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, the fact that you are not looking added for your own survival. That means you actually, do the best, because so many people who end up becoming coaches cut corners just so that they can do enough so they could get paid immediately, because that's their own sort of means of production. Now, when we first got into this episode, you introduced us to your schedule and you introduced us to the way that you operate. But I didn't want to tackle that question without having opened up so that people really understand the scope of the work that you're doing, because having such discipline and, like you say, Sherwood Forest Fair alone is a massive, massive operation. I mean, you're entertaining over 100,000, people, and you never know. There's probably another 14-year-old who's also traveling across, just so that they don't miss that fair, and you're creating that experience for them. And that's not an easy feat for people to actually be enamored to something at that sort of level. Now, when you introduced us to your your calendar and how rigid it is, I mean, rigid is not the good word for this, but how disciplined you are, what goes into that? What sort of mindset does one have to have in order to achieve such feats? Because some people will be like, nah, I don't think this is something that I'll be able to tackle myself, and obviously I want to be free. That's the reason why I'm getting into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is being very rigorous in terms of what I say yes to. There's kind of this philosophy when someone's asking me to do something, there's no is no, yes is no, hell yes is yes. So I only want to put something on my calendar if it's a hell yes. In fact, I probably could hold this up to the camera, but you wouldn't see it. It's the 10 things I have to do tomorrow. And I've got written down. Here are the 10 things I have to do tomorrow. And then I have two columns. Comparative advantage, meaning, do I have a comparative advantage in doing this myself? Meaning I can do this better than anybody else can. And the second is, do I like it? Do I want to do this? And actually, I am going to take 10 seconds and try to show this to you. Can you make that out at all?
Say something.
But you get the idea, which is that I've got the 10 things I'm doing tomorrow, and I either have a comparative advantage, yes or no, and I like it, yes or no, and every single one of these letters is a Y for yes. So I'm not going to do anything tomorrow that I'm not the right person to do, and I don't like doing it. And so, and I've got hundreds of these because I do one every day. And so I think it's being really rigorous about what I engage on.
Absolutely, I quite like that, and because if you know your why and you know exactly what you want to do, the how will always take shape and take place. Now, for those that are interested in maybe getting to know a little bit more about you and maybe getting in touch or being a part of the coaching that you are offering, where would they what would be the best starting point?
The best starting point is georgeappling.com. That's my personal website. It's got a little bit on all of my businesses in there. And importantly, it's got links to check out my book that comes out in 3 weeks. So yeah, that's the best place to find my email address is there. So I'm not that hard to reach.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I've really had an interesting journey into the Renaissance, and you're the Renaissance man, right? So to speak. But for somebody who's done formal education, I mean, you've got two master's degrees. They're from Harvard, right? And you've had this extensive background in consulting. Did you ever maybe imagine that you'd have maybe in your career or in your life that all this will morph into something that you have absolutely created yourself, and right now no one can say they can do this and repeat what you have done, because this is a combination of only the things that really fascinate you, and now you've made them into something of your own.
I think this was the plan. when I was 36 and I put that calendar in my BlackBerry at 40, it was, I'm gonna spend my days doing things that I'm genuinely passionate about. And again, I didn't know what that was, but I figured it out pretty soon. But yeah, what I'm doing now is the plan. Another fun example is I've asked my clients, my coaching clients, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years or 10 years? And they all describe something that's different than today. And then I'll sometimes do this as a group because my coaching clients get together once a month as a group. We're all together in a room. And if they ever make me answer the question, I'll say, you know what, in 10 years, I want my life to be exactly like it is now. Like I'm living the life that I designed to live. I want to do this until I fall over dead. And when they pull the plug, my parting words to this world are going to be the show must go on. And then I'm going to die.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that. You see, at the end of the day, we're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. And, when we have learned everything that we need to learn, sometimes we learn through other people's experiences and ways of being. And I think there's so much to learn about the person that you've become. But there's always a contribution factor. Now you're doing summer camps, and these are for young kids, right, that are learning, and obviously you are imparting your life story and experience to them. They will too learn to want to be, do, and have a passionate, or live vicariously through their own sort of passions. Now you've been incredibly intentional in, first of all, building your life around your sort of passions. Now, if you could maybe give advice to one 14-year-old in your summer camp, who's just wondering about, don't even know whether to keep playing video games or to, take on sport or, their academics, what would it be?
My answer to that might be a little bit unexpected. My answer to that is figure out how to take care of your body consistently. And I'll tell you why I say that. And I've got an infographic in my book on this. If you can get your heart rate to 60% of maximum or more, 30 minutes or more per day, 5 days per week or more, if you can do that, and you can do that with lots of things. It could be a brisk walk, right? It could be tennis or something. You can do anything to get your heart rate to 60% of maximum plus, 30 minutes a day plus, 5 days a week plus. You get all of these correlations. So that is negatively correlated with heart disease, cancer, anxiety, depression, and suicide attempts. So those things all go down if you figure out how to take care of your body. And then the opposite side, it's positively correlated with longevity, pretty important, reported happiness, pretty important, IQ, meaning if you take care of your body, you get smarter. Well, living longer, being happier and smarter, not having heart disease, cancer, anxiety, depression, there's nothing you can choose that's better than figuring out how to take care of your body. Really, there's no better decision you can make than making physical fitness a habit. No better decision.
Wow. Because if you can't do well if you don't feel well. And that's just amazing, because so many people would go into a lot of things, but this is just one way to summarize personal development. If you look after your body, then your body will allow you to be, do, and have everything that which you wish for. And
that's it. And I do try to emphasize, because I obviously have said those words before a bunch of times. That doesn't mean you have to be in the gym lifting weights. It could be anything that gets your heart rate to 60% plus, which, for me, even a brisk walk can do that. It can really be anything. So the challenge to the 14-year-old is find that thing that you can stick with, right? Whatever it is, volleyball or swimming or jumping, whatever it is, find that thing that you can stick with, because that's going to change your life. If you want a more standard answer that you kind of hit on, you hit on the wisdom of learning from other people. It's something that I also really talk a lot about to my summer camp kids. And the summer camp kids are 8 to 16 years old. Although I only teach the 12 to 16s. And I really talk to them a lot about wisdom. And what I say to them is, learning from your own successes and failures is kind of easy. What's really hard is learning from other people's successes and failures. So the more you can set your mind to truly learning from other people's successes and failures, the more wisdom you're going to have, the better decisions you're going to make, the better your life's going to be. And so we talk every day at summer camp in my class about how can you learn from something that somebody else did. And I'm like, give me an example from yesterday. Give me an example from yesterday. Give me an example from the real world. How did you learn from somebody else doing something well or poorly? And now how are you going to turn that lesson into your decision making? Because I think it's pretty easy to put your finger on the stove and burn your finger, and you learn not to do that. What's not easy to learn is when mom says, "Hey, don't put your finger on." People is
Absolutely.
really hard. So, like, I really encourage my kids.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wow. I think that is some remarkable lessons right there. Now, George, while you were speaking, I actually started thinking, indulge me for a moment here. You see, in my culture, I'm from Africa in Zimbabwe. In my culture, when you get to a certain age, especially between 13 to like 16, the boys in the village are called in by the village elders, and then you go through some lessons in life, so to speak, which at the end of it you're proverbially tapped on the shoulder and they tell you you're an adult now. And what that sort of does is it's a pattern break which separates the kid who came to that particular excursion and the adult who walks out of that, because now you can now go in and start learning the things that you want, that you're passionate about, and things that you can actually do to help your family, your community, and maybe yourself. That's in terms of work and remuneration and things of that nature. And while you're talking about these summer camps and things of that nature, I couldn't help but think and look at the similarities of what that is in terms of somewhat of a pattern break where these kids are being really taught things that if they go on and use in their lives, they can do and have a happier existence, especially this whole thing about looking after your own body type things. Because if you look at the outside world, so to speak, you just have a long pattern of go to kinder, go to high school, get married, get a job, buy a house in the suburbs with a picket fence, get a disease, and then you die. There's nothing that separates childhood to adulthood, and what you're doing is somewhat of that sort of, maybe for lack of a better word, rite of passage. Maybe you can comment a little bit on that observation.
I think you're right, and I think it's you may have just created your next book, and maybe we'll have to write it together. Because when you talked about that pattern break, it's a lot of things started occurring to me from different cultures. For example, here in Texas, there's a lot of Mexican culture here, and my kids are 16, 14, and 14, and so they keep going to these parties, and the party is called a quinceañera.
Quinceanera, yeah.
Quinceañera, and it's when a girl turns 15, and it is the break, and it's you are now a woman, and we have all agreed, like everybody's there, and you have this big party, and now everyone is on the same page. You're a woman now, go. And it's the same kind of thing. You talked about the village elders tapping the boys on the shoulder and say, now you're a man, go act like it. Or me, you got a week or two or three or four, running around the forest with Robin Hood as I'm brainwashing you to learn from other people's successes and failures, right? And you have no phone, right? There's no cell phones in Sherwood Forest Summer Camp. And so, but it's a really interesting thought that a lot of different cultures and people are trying to create these pattern breaks that might get someone's mindset to say, okay, I need to grow up a little bit right now.
Yeah, because if you really look at the corporate world or just the world in general, there's a lot of fully grown babies that are leading others or showing up to these jobs. And it's just creating a lot of burnout because nobody told them what the next logical step was. So thank you so much for doing your little part in saving the world, so to speak.
Well, that's people ask me why I do what I do, and I say, look, well, I'll tell you a fun little story. My father pulled me aside a few years ago and said, George, the next step in your business journey was to be the CEO or the heir apparent to a Fortune 500 company. And that's a kind of a $20 million a year job. He said, well, and you're not doing it. Why are you not doing it? And this is, before I was at 167,000, but I said, Dad, I'm bringing a day of joy to 100,000 people a year, and that's a good use of my time. And he looked at me and went, yeah, okay, yeah, all right. He wanted to argue, and he went, okay, yeah, I get it. Yeah, peace, fair point.
Yeah, what can you say? I mean, that is touche for real. Now, finally, I mean, we could go on and on. I quite know you're passionate about all of these things and things of that nature. But there's something that you said that stopped me dead in my tracks, where you said, if somebody asks you what's next, you'd say what I'm doing now, but obviously there's got to be something next. You did hint to the coming up of a new book. There's got to be maybe a documentary in the works, a movie, deals. What's next? I now want to know any new ventures that are in the horizon.
Yeah, I
Maybe
mean,
mead coffee or mead tea. I don't know. Maybe.
I think what's next for me is a university speaking tour. So my book comes out in 3 weeks, and I've got a talk that goes with my book, and like in a 60-minute university class or 75-minute class, and I've been giving that talk to Texas A&M University, where I went to college, and it's going really, really well. They're now saying they want me to come give my talk to every freshman in the College of Business.
Wow.
And so I think my university talk is really helpful, because what I do is I go through the book in a 30-minute presentation, and then I have this online assessment tool where the audience does the QR code, and they spend 5 minutes and they pick their path. And then it says, here are the 5 next steps on the path that you've chosen. So it's really impactful. So I'm hoping to do a nationwide and potentially global college speaking tour around the book. That's what I'm hoping is next.
Absolutely. I think all those young minds that are going to have, the privilege of, having you helping them would definitely be on the true path to, living a passionate existence. Now, George, we could go on and on. There's just so much with everything else that you've got lined up. And I'm very cautious that your calendar is probably buzzing right now, because we're about to get past the 1 hour we're scheduled for this. We should do this again, George.
Happy to. And nothing is buzzing because I do what I'm doing. Everything's turned off except talking to you. Nothing is buzzing.
I really, really appreciate that. What an incredible conversation that we've just had with George Appling. I mean, from all those medieval festivals to executive coaching. I think if you're watching right now, George has actually shown us how following your own passion can actually lead to both personal fulfillment and also business success. So, George, I can't thank you enough for just opening up this opportunity and also literally giving people permission to be, do, and have a happier existence or a business that's profitable and enjoyable. Thank you so much for that. Now, for those that are watching, if you actually found this episode insightful, first of all, encourage you to rewatch it, because so much was spoken about and it might have just gone way past, without you having actually taken notes. This time around, you go in taking really, really good notes. And I also encourage you to share this video with somebody who's probably stuck and not quite sure what their next logical step is. If it's not the video, maybe George's book will actually help them find where they are stuck so that they don't settle and they can actually start picking their path, so they can be guided to doing intentional work. And as you have heard, the book does come with an exercise that will actually allow you to see where you're at exactly, and so you're not just beating in the dark, you're actually doing and having that which you absolutely want. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for more inspiring stories from leaders who are actually changing the game like George. Until next time, keep chasing your passions. Bye for now.